before we get
So
to
you
that.
look
So
like
it looks
this.
like we're all in conversation.
I need to.
That was the 90s. I used to be on a thing called MSET. And
Okay.
they'll be like, all right, just talk. And then the woman goes, welcome to.
I told Jimmy, I was like, she needs to be on my side because the bob's on this side. And I have to open up her face on this side.
But I'm just gonna put it in a ponytail. I'm gonna be just playing with my hair.
All right.
What's
We
my angle?
are the advantages of being medium ugly.
That's too high.
Mhm.
That's too high. You can see a gap right here.
Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Thursday, February 29th, 2024, and it is the last day of Black History Month. As you can see immediately, and Alex, in this shot, yes, you can see the coast, but we're good. We are here today. Y'all know I'm organic and real. We have guests in my very humble home studio this morning. Last year, we had the opportunity to speak with the founder and CEO of Boston While Black, Sheena Collier, as well as lecturer, reporter, writer, hip hop aficionado. What's the word? Aficionado. Thank you so much. See, walking dictionary too. Dart Adams. And so we're going to chat with them today. Last year, the theme was Black Boston then and now. Dart, as he did then, and as you may remember, he is featured in the HBO Murder in Boston documentary, one of his latest things that he has accomplished. But he talked about the history of Boston, and Sheena sort of cast her vision for Boston going forward. Well, about a year later, we're here, and there's been a lot that has happened with Black Boston. Those that have migrated here willingly, those that have been migrated here, our brothers and sisters that have been displaced and move all across the country, transportation issues, things like that we're going to discuss. And I want to name one of Sheena's accomplishments as well. We are currently at, what, 12 plus 14? We're 1,200. 1,200 members of Boston While Black. It's a little bit over, right? We're going to get ready to bring them on the screen, but do me a favor, those of you that are here, first of all, hit that like and share button, because you're going to walk away with some gems today. You're going to walk away inspired. You're going to walk away encouraged. You might get a little pissed about some of the issues that we raised that's going on in our community as Black Boston. So without further ado, I would like to ask you all to put the virtual hands in the comments, clap, love, hearts, whatever. Put the black hearts today. We're talking about Black Boston. I would like to welcome Sheena and Dart Adams to the Java Cafe. Good morning to both of you. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good.
We got you there. So I got you, Sheena. I think go do it again.
Good morning.
Okay, we're good. So this is they are my test case in having two folks in the studio. So I appreciate both of you being here with me this morning. I wanted to first of all ask both of you, how are you doing? You both move in a perspective that sometimes can be heavy. The research, the future. Sheena, you move in places around influencing policy and what's going on in the city. Dart, you had that influence as well. You go through the stress of educating some knuckleheads that think they know some things. So Sheena, I'll start with you. Of course, ladies first. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jimmy, Dart, and the Java audience. Today is the last day of Black History Month, as you said. It's also a leap year, so we got an extra day.
Yes, an extra day to be Black.
That's right. Leading a company called Boston While Black, I think this is true for Dart too. You can imagine that Black History Month is very active and involved. So one of my prevailing feelings right now is tired. Though we are, because of what we do in our mission and just my own, always being steeped in Blackness, I actually don't really think about Black History Month when it's coming up, because it's just something I'm always thinking about. And I always get caught off guard of how much activity is increased. So I've definitely been a little overwhelmed this month, but overall, I'm feeling good. This is my 20th anniversary of the year I moved to Boston.
Yeah, we got sound effects. So Alex and I were talking about that, because I said it. I can't believe it's been 20 years. I met you back in the day at DSNI. And so, wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
You made it.
I did.
You survived.
I did. I
You
left.
stayed.
I came back, but I'm here.
Okay. We are glad that you're here, because there's, as a native of Boston, I got to say that Boston While Black, I was telling Alex there's a new member getting ready to come. I was referring them on social media yesterday. I'll send you all the screenshot. But as a native of Boston, I have to say there are some things and some networks that I've been tapped into that when I joined as an inaugural member, that's a joke between Sheena. The connections made have been dope. And for 50, I'll say 49, 50 years, some of those networks I weren't tapped into. So
Hey, how old are you, Jimmy?
I'm 52.
Okay. You look so young. I forgot.
Hold on. We needed to switch the scene. And so no, seriously, Sheena, thank you. Dart, you're from here. You see a lot that's going on. You've received a lot of attention, probably good, bad, and ugly since the documentary. I have to ask you, Black man, how are you?
I'm great.
If you know Dart, you heard everything in there. I'm great.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about being from South End Lower Roxbury is that Like I was pretty much raised by a bunch of Roxbury kids, and they pretty much instilled in me that you're going to go through it every single day. Because again, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, especially in this city, in my neighborhood, you got tested every single day.
Yes, sir.
Non-stop. And also the other part was that we very much felt it. Like one of the reasons I'm a historian and I'm so like vocal today is that we very much felt that we were being ignored in the city. Like my stretch of Mass Ave between Columbus and Tremont at the time, anybody could tell you who was here, every third building was burnt down or abandoned. Stairs were covered with wood. Directly across the street from me, I tell people the story all the time. Directly across the street from me, Ella Little Collins was living. So I lived at 487. I believe she lived at 486. At the end of my block was the NAACP building. Directly across the street from that was the Harriet Tubman building. Now, mind you, the street, there weren't even like stripes painted for like the crosswalks, like the stop, the walk, all that stuff wasn't painted. It wasn't maintained. So growing up back then, it was up to us to keep ourselves
and
up.
you're talking about what we now know as Lower South End,
Yes.
Lower Roxbury,
Yeah,
South End.
Lower Roxbury.
Interesting.
So the neighborhood had to look out for the neighborhood, our neighbors, whether it's Miss Lopez, Miss Johnson, Miss Wang, you know, and then we had a LGBTQ community there too, because people don't understand that the South End and Lower Roxbury was one of the places where it was the only place where you could see a rainbow flag.
Yeah.
People would come from all over, feel
Yes,
like
sir.
they felt seen and like they might be safe there, you know, because they had community. So when you grow up in that environment, there's nothing outside that can affect you, especially when you grow up being a black kid, knowing that outside of New England or Massachusetts, nobody even knows you exist. You know, New Edition was our sign to life. So I'm always going to be good.
So there's a few things that, and everybody knows that, you know, how we do this, I respond to their answers. And so I have some things in mind, but you talked about, Sheena, you started, or both of you, well, Dart, maybe it was you that talked about Mass Ave and intersections and whatnot. One of the first things I want to jump into that's a hot topic right now. Yesterday, the mayor dropped the announcement about the $44 million investment that's being made in the upgrading of Blue Hill Ave from Mattapan Square. Probably is going to end at Grove Hall, if I remember right. And so with what you mentioned, Dart, about, you know, the streets in that area and whatnot, and a lot of the improvements that are being made to neighborhoods, there are mixed emotions around this upgrade. And let's give some context. Also, and I said this in they did a press briefing, and I heard everything. And at the end, I asked the question. I said, you know, they said they did community engagement and everything. And I said, there's a population of folks that don't want this upgrade. It's evident in those white poles that are around the city. 30-40% of them have been ripped up, knocked down, people American Legion destroyed. And so a lot of context, but let me ask, and I'll start with you now, Dart, is your response to that. There's this new movement of transportation equity. Congresswoman Presley is the co-founder of the Transportation Justice Caucus or Transportation Equity Caucus. And she's supportive of this and rallied at the federal level to get the money to come in. As far as Black Boston, with this improvement ending in 26, what impact do you think that's going to have on our community? You can talk from economics, you can talk from beautification, whatever perspective you would like.
Well, in terms of like making it easier to go from here to there, one of the things that you see in like Black communities, especially when I was growing up in you know, around what was then Dudley Square, going all the way down to where I lived, it wasn't easy to move around anymore after they tore down the L in 1987 and moved it.
You just told your age.
Yeah,
you said the L.
Yeah, so they tore down the L in 87, they stopped it, and then they moved the Orange Line underground. And one of the things that happened was they moved the stations that went through Roxbury. You know, there was no more Northampton. You know, there was no more Dudley. There was, all those stations were gone. And instead, things moved straight where we had Essex at one point. Now it's, you know, Chinatown, Downtown Crossing, you know, to Roxbury Crossing, you know, Jackson Square, what have you, going that way. And one of the things that happened was at Dudley Square, it switched everything to buses, just being straight to bus terminals. And then they had to make the other shuttles, the SL 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And what was supposed to make things better and more equitable in terms of moving around, it kind of congested things in a way, but the more shuttles made it easier, but still it's not as easy as it was before. But then again, one of the things you want to do in the cities, you want to have growth, and Boston could not grow for the longest. There was a stretch of about 25 years where Boston could not grow. So it didn't start growing until it started all the parcels that were in the neighborhood that were being not built on, until they built up and they had some type of value, and then they started building things there, and then we start seeing movement there. So in terms of what's going to happen there, it's a long time coming, and it's something that should have happened probably 10-15 years ago. The problem is that now with the high volume of gentrification, is that we're afraid that once that starts and things start getting better looking and it's easier to get there, what's going to happen is the people who live there aren't going to be living there anymore.
It's interesting because I would probably say about 25 years ago, I had the thought that the reason I didn't know the term, I just noticed that there were a lot more white people coming in Boston. And what I realized was, with the change of the L to now the Southeast corridor,
Southwest corridor,
Southwest corridor, what was first introduced. I'm like, it's about convenience and transportation. It's easier when you live in Boston to get downtown, where most of the jobs are. It's easier to get to Seaport. And so thank you for giving sort of that historical context. Sheena, your thoughts on the development? I don't know if you've been engaged.
No, but I've been paying attention.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I didn't miss that. No. I didn't miss that. No.
What? No.
As far as being engaged in the planning of it, with intentionality.
No.
Given who you represent.
Yeah, I haven't, as far as and I'm only saying that because I'm careful about areas where I don't live. I don't live on that corridor. And so I think that the residents' voice is what needs to be leading as far as
leadership,
input.
y'all.
But have I been in conversations about it? Yes.
Okay, absolutely.
A lot of it is what I think is aligned with Dart, though. As I was listening to you, I was thinking about when I worked at Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, and one of the values was development without displacement. And the time that I was there was when the Dearborn School was being moved. And it actually makes me a little emotional and sad, the way that we reject, somewhat rightfully so, any type of upgrade or development because of the perception and fear of what's going to come after that. Yeah. I think that there's a lot in this transportation plan. So I think there are parts of it that are helpful. Maybe there are parts of it that probably still need to be reevaluated. But as Dart said, overall, the city does have to grow. And one of the things I've been thinking about, one of the things I actually do in my own work, and it's a very non-Boston thing to do, but I look at what's happening in other places, because I think that we get very insular, and we think about, we're comparing Boston to Boston instead of looking at what's happening in the country and the rest of the world. So if you look at this in the context of other places, it's not really a new thing. It's just new to our city. And because we have this, again, rightfully deserved mistrust, I think, of government and of these processes that have often happened to people and not with them, I think people's default is to be against things.
I mean, generationally, if you think about what happened, we have family that were so black folks didn't always live in the South End, Lower Roxbury, into Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. At one point they lived in Beacon Hill, and they were pushed out of Beacon Hill into the South End. They lived in the West End. West End was raised, and they were pushed out of the West End into the South End, Lower Roxbury, and Roxbury, and then North Dorchester, which is something I just learned recently, is that black folks were concentrated in North Dorchester. I know
versus
there was
South Dorchester.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a North Dorchester. I didn't know that.
What's North Dorchester?
See, that's a good question,
but that's something when I was in the Menino administration, that was when Frida Brassfield was the one that made me familiar. And so at first I thought South was more where the black folks are. I think it's opposite. North is what sort of the hood, Common Square, and then South is, I think, what Neponset, closer to. I believe I
Mhm.
believe that's right.
Yeah.
But there is a separation of North and South Dorchester, just like West Roxbury. And
I had
we're not
no
gonna go
idea
there.
until I was doing research about specifically. I was doing research about the February 26, 1964. Of course, was the Freedom School date where like we had the Freedom sit out, and kids. 20,000 kids sat out of the Boston public school system, didn't go to school that day, but 10,000 kids attended classes at 35 different Freedom School sites. And I was like commemorating that anniversary. And the thing was, I was looking around at the different sites and how few of them still exist. And when I look at all that stuff, I'm thinking about all the distrust from the community, because whenever they say we're going to improve something, they raise the West End entirely. We're going to improve things. We're going to put a highway here. They destroy a whole swath of the South End, Lower Roxbury. If you go back and look, when I do research, I look at historical clubs or historical things or where these people met third places. And I was like, they don't exist. And I was like, look what happened to them. Okay, they were destroyed by the BRA here. There was a beautification process here. There was a whole new plan put in place to remove this here, and then it was like slum clearance here. So there's 60 years of Black Boston being erased, and it's because we want to have ease of use and we want to put different things in place to make things better for the populace. But what ends up happening is we end up losing a lot in the process. So I think that's why there's so much distrust, because we have 3-4 generations of that to show for it.
Sheena, any additional thoughts there? And then we'll move on to, I was going to move on to,
yes, agreed.
okay. I was going to move on to economic development, but something that you both said, we did a call last night with Vital Connections, Dr. Joseph Rich. I always mix it up, Richard Joseph or Joseph Rich. And Dr. Betancourt was a part of it. And he talked about the fact that by default, we don't trust the medical system, even when it's good for us. By default, when things are being upgraded, because of our experience, we're sitting back like, wait, it's being presented one way, but what's the real deal? And so that made me think about that conversation in the health space last night and the similarity between the by default. They were talking that basically by default, and they taught us something. I want to share it here too, is we need to stop saying medical mistrust, because that puts the ownership on us. Mm-hmm. And it's actually the system that has made us not trust them. Long way of saying, in that context, I want to switch and actually ask, and Sheena, I'll start with you in this segment. Post-COVID, where are we? We talked about, I think last year, this proverbial window that was open post George Floyd, DEI, all that other stuff. 65% of the DEI investments are gone. Yes. Positions. Where are we? And you can speak particularly, I love my city in Boston, but as you talked about the fact that we're getting outside and I want the platform to grow too, nationally, because you've been out there, where are we as a Black community first nationally? And then where are we as far as locally? And Dart, I'll come to you as well.
Well, a couple of things that somewhat answering your question, but what I thought of when you initially posed it, talking about post-COVID, one of the things, as far as I think just where we are as a country, that then impacts things like DEI and other things, we've moved away. We did have this window where we were thinking more about the collective, and some of it was real, some of it was not. Mm-hmm. But I think even for the places where it was not, people believed that they had to at least be voicing that. Remember, we were clapping for doctors and nurses when they were coming home. Like, we were doing all of this. We have this kind of like, I think one of the things that COVID showed us in the pandemic was how connected we are. Yeah. And that we have to create solutions that take into account everybody's well-being. And it was a devastating but hopeful time. I actually started making a list during COVID of the things I thought were going to change. I thought teachers were going to be paid more. I thought, like, I had this kind of prediction list. None of them have come to bear. But then we got back to, I guess maybe like early to mid 2021. And it was like the hustle came back. Now we're trying to.
What do you mean? Okay, maybe you're going to explain. What do you mean by the hustle came back?
I think that people were semi back to work or some fully back to work. And I think our just American nature kicked in of like, okay, how do we now all capitalize off of this time? Mm-hmm. And everyone
Mm.
went into, I mean, Frank, I started a business during that time. Many
Yep.
people did. You know,
It
there
started.
yeah, there were a lot of things that happened that we moved out of this place of caring for each other and back to capitalism, frankly.
So let me go a little bit deeper and ask specifically for Black folks, because I've been saying that we've never experienced a world pandemic. And from Black folks uniting or unifying more, we may not ever, Thaddeus always says, James, we may never be united, but we need to unify where we should. Particularly to our community, I just thought that it's a world pandemic. Like I thought things would change. And so as to hear you say that nothing on that list,
Nothing on my prediction
on your
list. I won't say
predictions,
nothing changed, but I have felt disheartened, particularly the last 6 months. So when you bring up the DEI conversation, very triggering for me because of the work that I do, and we partner with a lot of corporations. Just even the re-educating, or I find that, so for me, when talking to companies, we're almost starting back at zero sometimes of having to explain why this is important. Explain why equity is important, explain why it's important for people to have spaces of belonging. I will say, just as a side note, I do think the media hype some of it up more than is actually happening. So we've pulled together our companies. We have 18 partners and they're still committed. And so I do think that there is a chilling effect that is done on purpose to try to make us feel like no one's doing this anymore, so that people start to pull away. So I don't know if it's as pervasive as it really seems, but nevertheless, it is happening. And so, but the reason I started with how I felt, what I saw happen just for us as a country during COVID, because I think that's just one of the many symptoms of it, is that we were in this kind of, we're all in this together, corporations, people, media, and because we have just been taught to have very individual interests, I think we've gone back to that, unfortunately. Even the conversation we were just having about the plan for Blue Hill Ave and other things happening in the city, we default back to a kind of, what's in this for me, or how is this going to impact my life? And I don't know. I think it's hard for us to think about the collective. We need leaders and we need voices that are making sure that that's on the top of people's radar.
absolutely. There's so much that I want to unpack, but I want to give Dart a chance. Where are we nationally and locally?
I think about what happens is the default kicks back in and we're back to, all right, we're under a system where we have to make money to survive. And one of the main reasons why people were going out and they were even getting like one of the main reasons of people going out and getting vaccinated is because if I don't get vaccinated, I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, so I can make money, so I can go into the space and do that. So that was one of the main reasons why people were even going to get vaccinated, which is crazy because the medical distrust amongst the Black community and Latino community is high.
Remember, we're changing that term.
Yes.
Us not
You didn't
trusting.
give us the alternative term.
Yeah.
So I can't think. I asked them last night, and I wound up explaining it in a whole our non-trusting the medical industry or the medical industry regaining our trust. But not to be facetious, but you of all people know words matter.
Yeah, exactly. And like one of the things was that I got vaccinated every single time because as soon as I saw what the symptoms were and how it spread, it's airborne, I was like, I'm not playing with this. As you see, I've been wearing a mask since March 13th, 2020. I have not gotten it once since. And the crazy thing is that when they switched over and they made it so that you couldn't go to the clinic or the hospital, and I live in close proximity to several clinics and hospitals, BMC, all the related spots. So I would just go there and I would just go, get vaccinated. I have my vaccination cards on me. And when they switched it over so that now it's a corporate thing, now it's a business thing, you have to go to a CVS and have somebody who's never done that before and now has to deal with your insurance and all these other things. And have you been to a CVS and then they've gotten rid of like the Walgreens,
That's
in the
a whole
neighborhood.
nother.
And when you go to a CVS in Roxbury or South End or back Dorchester, have you been to one during the time where they were lining up people to, you know, get their shots and stuff like that. It was chaos. So when I went to do mine, I used to work at a CVS in Beacon Hill. So I went to the one I worked at. And when I went there, the woman behind the counter pretty much was telling me was, do you have insurance? I was like, I gotta tell you, not really. I was just gonna pay out of pocket. She was like, you know, this is gonna cost $200 something out of pocket. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. And it's gonna be a hassle because X, Y, and Z. And
So she started talking you down.
well, yeah. Well, the thing was that the reason why I was there is because I went to the hospital. I went to clinics and they were telling me, oh no, we're not doing that here. You have to go through this, this, and this. So when I went there, I was already behind 5 people who were already having issues with insurance. And I'm in Beacon Hill. So you know what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
So she's like, and she knows me because, you know, I used to work there and I've been on TV. And she was just telling me like all the issues that they are having with trying to get people in and out, you know, and how it's overworking people in like that space because you just want to be a pharmacist, you know, you just want to be a tech. And now you're dealing with all this extra stuff. Yeah, now you got to give shots and do all this extra stuff. And it was slowing things down. It was making more work. And it was bringing people that should have been in a hospital in a medical environment to a CVS pharmacy. And so I didn't get this round of vaccination. So I was extra careful this time. So that kind of put me at risk. And I'm not the only person. There were a whole bunch of people that saw what was happening when they moved it from the medical field to making it, you know, a case thing that it was a product to be sold, you know? So if you think about that alone, that put so many people at risk because there was this new wave of it. And then on top of it, there was this other, you know, virus, you know, that was spread, the RSV. And so you want people to come in to get that shot, a flu shot, and then try to avoid getting RSV. And you're supposed to make things easier because it's supposed to be about helping everybody, you know, be healthy. But then I would just see the numbers come back and I'm like, nobody's reporting about this. The CDC has washed their hands of everything, you know? So I felt like things were in a thing where you got to look out for yourself. And after COVID and after people were getting back to work, it went back from, oh, clap for essential workers and let's all be in this together and look out for each other to, hey, bro, you on your own.
So to that point, Sheena, where you talked about the hustle, thank you for like clarifying, because that could go either one or two ways. Again, we're going to get into economic development, but again, everybody knows my energy goes off of the answers of my guest, and so I want to for you to start this topic. COVID-19 showed us what a lot of us experienced and knew. It exacerbated the social determinants of health, all the terms we use, inequities in medical care. And we talked about it a little bit. The health of Black America, where are we? And as far as a Black man, you gave that experience. So I have to highlight the fact you as a male, as a Black male, made a conscious decision to go in and get care. You know, for that's big. And so to name that systemic piece, and I never really heard it articulated that way as far as I'm going to make up a word, the corporatizing of the vaccination. And not to bring up all the stuff that happened at the Reggie and you know, we couldn't, it was in our hood, but we couldn't go. More people were coming in from outside, lighter than me, coming in from outside and it was easier for them. Anyway, the health of Black America I keep saying post COVID, but the health of Black America, and you can talk to Black men, where are we as far as our health, the medical industry, things that changed and whatnot? And Sheena, I would love to hear your thoughts right after.
So for me personally, one of the things that even made me say, you know, I should go to the hospital more or I should do X, Y, and Z and take care of my health is because I spent years with my mother at the end of her life, you know, because she was going through cancer treatment that ultimately, you know, she passed away in August 2016. And so I was taking her constantly to Boston Medical Center and all the related facilities around. And they're in close proximity to me. I walk there, you know, it's like a 10-15 minute walk from me there. So if I had an issue, I would just go. And, you know, I was born in Boston City Hospital, what is now Boston Medical Center. And so, you know, I had my card and everything, you know, I would have to go through all the things to update my insurance, what have you. But since the pandemic happened, I've been wary of going to the hospital because once they started camping down on wearing masks, once they started obliterating certain things that were had me feel like, okay, I'm in a safe space if I do go. If I go to the hospital now, nobody's wearing masks, nobody has any type of protections, and who knows who has what. Because with the latest, with the latest versions of this virus, it can lie dormant for longer, and you can be sick and not know it.
And it's
Yeah. And so I've been wary of going to the hospital, and I've, stocked up on certain things. And I try to avoid certain things and actions so that I don't have to go to the hospital.
Dark got a little bunker in the house.
Yeah. So yeah. So to give you an idea, like I'm trying, I pray that, nothing serious happens to me medically where I have to go to the hospital. I've been lucky so far. So that gives you an idea. If that's how I am, then I can imagine the trepidation other people have.
That part, and Sheena, we're going to hear your thoughts. But I'm realizing that there is sort of, for me, I won't say unspoken, and I haven't heard it again articulated like that, that there is a sort of unfamiliar to me impact of COVID that isn't as obvious as the other stuff. But one of the things that I heard was, and one of the things that we know from us doing Your Healthy Java, screenings.
Yes.
Where in 2020, you may go and get a breast exam and they may say, hey, you might look a little stage 0. Let's work on this. You weren't going to the hospital.
Mhm.
Some people may not feel safe 4 years later. Somebody finally decides in 2024 to go to the hospital in stage 3, stage 4. And so that we're going to end on Black Joy for sure. But the implications of those things that we lived and knew, but were more exacerbated and brought to the surface during COVID are crazy. Sheena, our health in Black America, and then you can end maybe from what you perceive in Boston, because we're a medical hub and whatnot. And you just think, again, I just can't believe that post the world, we've never had a world pandemic. And I just don't understand how people's mentality has not shifted. Even, and let's name that before and even in COVID, the bogged downness of especially our people. Sheena.
Yeah,
health in Black America.
Yeah, I want to raise another part of our health. I mean, particularly both of you talked about some of the unseen impact is the mental health piece.
My mother, Mama Java, just said it. Y'all want to talk about the mental health impact?
So coming from being a educator, is my what I was trained as and worked in Boston Public Schools for years. One of the first flags for me that the pandemic was really serious was when Boston Public Schools shut down.
Oh, yeah.
And I, having worked with children and families for years, thought about learning loss and all of those things that were going to happen. I actually hadn't even yet thought about the mental health implications. I was thinking about how much children were going to be behind, particularly those who were already behind. What we are experiencing now, I'm sure we see, for example, what's happening in Brockton schools.
Yeah.
And there is this untreated mental health impact on all of us. We just went back to regular life. There was no guidance. There was no, we were here, now we're here. I think that humans adapt. It's just what humans do, but I don't think it's necessarily healthy. And I've even felt it for myself at times when it's like I just picked up and went back to being really busy and being focused on achievement and accomplishments and KPIs but there's
for those that don't know, let's educate. KPI. Alex, I told you was going to get on the mic. One way or another, Alex, what a KPI?
No, my mind just like went blank. They're metrics, key performance indicators.
Yeah, there you go. Performance indicators
that you measure your work with. So, so because everything got back focused on that, as Dart put really well, because we have to work to eat and live and survive, and don't have the luxury, unfortunately, to really focus on taking care of ourselves. So I have y'all so much concern about not even this year, like in the next 5 or 10 years,
Oh yeah.
what is going to bubble to the surface?
Well, also
Sheena?
one of the sad parts is that I've spoken at a whole bunch of colleges, universities, and high schools. I've been at several high schools over the last 2-3 years, and I've talked to them, and I've seen how schools operate differently now, and they always go back to, well, since the pandemic, and we came
Right.
out of Zoom, and kids come to class, they might stay, what have you. We don't know how they're feeling at home. We see kids are completely different now than they were 2-3 years ago when they're in class, how they feel coming into class, their performance,
Yeah.
everything else, and there are all these indicators that over the last 3 to 5 years, things have changed drastically with the students.
Yeah.
Like I was at a school where they were just like, kids were just coming in to different classes. It was like, as long as they're in school. They would just hop to class and stuff like that. It was like, as long as we can retain them, we're good with
It's
that.
really scary. It's scary.
This ain't after dark, almost cuss. We've lowered okay. I keep putting up next subject, economic development. We're gonna switch the subject now. Coming out of COVID, we're moved into the mental health space. Mama Java's happy. You brought up Brockton and the education.
Yeah, Brockton
where
High is
are
going
we?
through it.
We started with you, Sheena, in the last segment. So Dart, continue Brockton. And I've been saying, I was talking to a provider yesterday or the day before, and DSM-4 is the diagnosis, something that they use, to DSM-5 now, to assign our mental health illnesses or whatever. And I said to them that there was going to be in DSM-6, there's going to be this post-COVID
Yes.
anxiety, post-COVID PTSD. I've been saying that we're seeing the beginning of the impact of COVID on our society and our young people. But Sheena,
Well, I got to say something quickly. I know you're going to go to Dart first.
go.
But part of my concern is compacted by the fact that we act like, so as I'm reading about what's happening in Brockton, I'm just using as an example.
Yep.
I don't hear them saying, because we were in a pandemic for years, right?
Because it's to your point.
They're trying to make it about the kids. And it's like, y'all, we just went through the dark ages just
what did you say
3 years ago.
It's because of what you said.
Right.
We just went back, and not even just the economic development, but in our mentality. And that's why I had teased that thing and asked both of you, or asked you rather, were we resilient?
Yeah.
Because we celebrate resilience, but the way you become more resilient is to keep being put through.
Yeah. It's weird because especially like with Black folks and Latino folks and other ethnic minorities, we're lauded and praised for our resilience and having to run through brick walls and endure and be beat down and survive. But at what point is it just, it's not even resilience anymore, and it's not something to be applauded. It's just something that you need to take care of yourself. You need to address what's going on, because getting up and keep going, because there's also like these sports metaphors. If you get knocked down 9 times, get up 10. Well, in reality, if you fall down 9 times and get up 10, you're going to be in pain, and you're going to need to address that pain. But we don't talk about that. And the thing is that when you then compound that with the fact that you're dealing with people that interact with other people who are in family units, who have jobs and have to work for and with other people, it's not just impacting one person or 2 people, it's impacting an entire community, and we're all going through it together, but we're all acting as if it's just Thursday and never discussing what actually the trauma and the pain that we're actually dealing with on a daily basis.
What are you doing? What's happening?
Because so Sheena sitting over here going like this, because I'm very analytical. And though a heathen, the Bible says gifts cometh without repentance, I still have my gifts as being a seer. And it's what I see. That's the whole reason why this started. Got the cup of coffee and knew what was coming. And what I see based on, if we don't change course, oh my, we are going to be in a very, we are going to be on the cusp of being resilient again and just making it versus coming out thriving.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
that's one of the things about being a historian. It's depressing because things tend to repeat, and one of the things
But
that
that's
people
insanity
that's
because you
insanity.
keep doing
It's the
sorry.
same thing, right? One of the saddest things about being a historian is that you see these patterns.
Yeah, keep talking. That's Alexa. They used to it.
Okay. Yeah, you see these patterns repeat. Whether we're talking about conservatives. Because if you're a Gen Xer, you grew up under 2 decades of conservative leadership, and when we finally came out of it, it was the
We got
90s.
we got Buck Wild.
Yeah, it was the 90s, and we were like, okay, we can have some headway, and we can finally do some things after those 8 years of the Clinton administration, and then we went right back into another conservative regime, and that's when we get things like after 9/11, you get the Patriot Act, you get the Patriot Act 2, and we're trying to come out from under that. And it's just nonstop trying to dig ourselves out of holes. And right now, with the rise of like what's happening, with the Trump and everybody that follows him, the whole MAGA situation, we're up against it again. And we're just so beat down mentally that we have to deal with this, and then the possibility of this looming in October, the possibility of this looming. So it just gets to be a point where it's just all so much that it just feels like you're just in a quagmire and you can never get out from under it all.
Dart, again, so much to unpack, and I don't know, Sheena, if that was your only response in reference to I was getting ready to go into education. We started this about health, but there are social determinants of health. There are the disparities. There's a report that the Boston Public Health Commission just put out that really, and I think they're going to do a subset of pulling numbers just for our demographic, Dart, Black men. But Sheena, I just want to allow you space to your perception of our health. And one of the things that came up last night was when access is made, there is the balance of us not trusting the system. But I had asked Thaddeus a couple of weeks ago in talking with him and this other person, we were talking about Black Love Week, us getting to a point where we make our health a priority. Mental, all of it. And so any thoughts on there? And then we're going to move on to finally talking about economic development, y'all.
Any thoughts on making health a priority?
Yeah, making health a priority, and just sort of you want to put in there your perception of the healthcare system now post-COVID. You can do it locally or
Yeah,
nationally.
well, I'll talk about my own experience, which is me and Dara are like soul sister and brother. It's very, very similar.
I knew I felt something when we brought y'all together.
Just as far as, again, someone, putting it a little differently than he put it, but similar of very tapped in, very connected, well resourced as far as, knowing how to access things for myself. And my own hesitation it took for me to go back to going to the doctor. Going back because of having these years of not being able to do it. And so when I was finally able to, had like a 2-hour physical, because it was like I had to catch up on years of things that I hadn't been monitoring for the past couple of years. And so, for multiple things, I often use myself as an example in saying that if I go out of my way. I mean, I've made a career, right, out of being super knowledgeable about a lot of things and knowing how to access resources. I can only imagine a person who doesn't have the time for that and doesn't know what to look up, can't make a call to someone to move them up on a list and all of that. And so, I worry a lot about a disconnect that we had between us and healthcare system that has only grown wider in this time. And as far as, I guess, ways to address it and the question around making ourselves a priority, I mean, this is not going to be a surprise that I say this, but I think it just has to be done in community. I think that there is so much that we're up against systemically that we have to continue to challenge and fight and work towards. And we cannot do that if we're not supporting each other. It is very tiring. It is soul sucking at times to be able to, because it's like, where do you even start? You know, how do you even know sometimes if you're making progress? And so it has to, you know, the national conversation looming, the national, this election that's looming, I mean, is so much. And so I tend to, in those moments, go back to focus on local and focus on community and kind of what's my sphere of influence? Who are the people I can impact? Who are the decision makers I can get to? And I won't say not pay attention to national because we have to, but I can't take that on. You know, I have to really, for me, I do it through the lens of Black people, but really focusing on the community that I can be a part of, help build, and help to influence. And I think that we just have to do more of that. We have to be supporting each other. And, you know, my hope is that I like Thaddeus's, what you shared around, we don't have to have unity, but we need to unify.
We need, yeah.
Because I think that sometimes we are wading into like, find the person that likes the 10 things we like, and then that's the only person I'm going to mess with. And it's like, no, it can't be like that. If we just need to support each other, regardless of, we don't have to support each other on every issue, but there are some places that we need to be aligning more. Our health, our mental health, our economic development is going to rely on that.
In which we're going to get there. Dart, I know you want to say something else, and then you mentioned something about national politics, and I'm going to get both of y'all are going to crack up when I ask this next question. Dart, give us a closing, whatever you wanted to respond to what Sheena was saying there.
Oh no, I just agree with everything said, because the thing is that it has to start with community, right? Because back in the days, the Black Panther Party, when it was like founded in Boston back in July 1968, one of the things they did was they did grassroots things for the community. They wanted to impact our health directly. They want to like help the kids out directly. They created a clinic, you know, and they filled in gaps and voids, and they saved a lot of people's lives and got them on the right path, you know, just being right there in the community. So I think we got to get back to that, because the people are so distrustful of, and I wish I had another word, of, you know, the huge big health, that we need to bring it right back to back in the days when we had all these different community grassroots organizations and clinics that people would go to directly because they didn't feel like going over there.
It's needed. I want to shift a little bit based on the fact of national politics. Tip O'Neill, our congressman from here from some years ago, coined the phrase that all politics are local. However, if you're paying attention, and this has become such a cliche, democracy is on the line.
Yes.
While locally, I agree, Sheena, that we need to participate in local politics every election, not just presidential. Boston has an election every single year. I want to ask, sort of in that vein, I just want to ask you to respond with one word. Sheena's looking at me because she know I'm about to get her.
Who am I going to vote
for? No. She didn't do that. I'm going to say one word. I'm going to put you right on camera. National politics in the context of Fat Joe.
Oh, these Trump sneakers. Yeah.
I need to lighten it up a little bit. It's serious, but I need to lighten it up. And Dart, I'm waiting. Oh, you see Dart's face? I'm waiting.
One word. Are you going to tell people what happened?
Okay, so for those of you that don't know, there is a video floating around of Fat Joe, who is a sneakerhead. And from that perspective, he is saying he had to get the Trump sneakers. And so there's been a lot of pushback from some Black folks and a lot of embracing from some other folks of Fat Joe and his Trump sneakers. Thoughts? One word, and then the context for the one word.
Short-sighted.
No.
I need one of them. So I don't think we need any. Well, Dart, if you can, give your context for no, and then short-sighted, Sheena, because and please, I say this respectfully, as layman's context as possible, so folks understand the implications of this national election. Yeah, Massachusetts, you know, we're blurple in some of the we're blurple. And I'll tell y'all what that means later. Go ahead, sir.
It's red and blue mixed together. It sets a dangerous precedent. What it does is sets a dangerous precedent. What it does is that it gives the impression that we with you.
Yeah, you can say it. We ain't after dark.
And no,
Well, we are. But.
no, we don't. We can't. More importantly, we can't.
Why?
We can't.
Why
even
can't we
entertain it? Because this man, if he gets into office again, he tried to overthrow the government, man, because he lost an election. If he gets into office, he's going to try to become emperor. I took a class, the most important class I ever took in my entire life was at Harvard. I did it at the extension school at night. A man named Dennis Kiotis, may he rest in peace, in a class called Hitler's Wars. And the postscript was the first demagogue. All right. I took this class in spring semester 1997. I still have the notes. It broke down so much about how people abated Hitler and how they let him happen and how they could have stopped him at so many different turns, but they turned a blind eye, but they let it happen. And then when he took over, he's like, he's not going to get that far. He's not going to do this much. He's not even that smart. This is not going to happen. His support is waning, this and this and this. And what happened was people died. A lot of people died and history changed forever. And then everybody was like, we screwed up. So we can't allow that to happen again. It's not a joke. Politics, like people look at politics as something they can't understand. It's very simple. Democracy is in danger. Democracy as we know it is in danger. I know if you don't understand politics, understand that people can die and will die.
People, let's keep it 100. Under that administration, because of just pure stupidity and ignorance,
yes,
people died.
Yes.
And I'm not going to touch COVID this time of year because it's, I'm sensitive with this anniversary coming.
Yeah.
Sheena, your thoughts in reference to just that piece about what Dart was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I said short-sighted is because Fat Joe in this case and others, I saw what's homegirl's name, Candace,
what's it
on
the
Joe
one,
Budden show.
He had her on there.
Yeah,
stop platforming these people,
right? And so I think that,
sorry,
I mean, back to what I said about capitalism, that stuff goes to your head. You're doing stuff for likes, you're doing people are doing things for clout, to be a part of conversation, and underestimating the influence that they have, underestimating how those images, those messages can be used by the other side to kind of twist things. Things live online forever, right? Because once I heard it, I went to his page and it's not up there anymore, but it doesn't matter.
But it's been screenshotted.
Yeah,
it's been
right. So I think that I just want us to just own our power a little bit more and understand the level of influence that we have. He probably thinks like, oh, I'm just whomever. And, I don't necessarily have this kind of impacts on national politics, but you do. People look to pop stars. They look to people that shape the culture for how they think and how they're going to move and the choices that they make. And so I just think it's really short-sighted. And again, I don't want to be super like Handmaid's Tale-ish, but I don't think that we are really, and part of this is for protective reasons, right? We can't live in that space. We can't be super doomsday all the time. We have to continue. For me, as an entrepreneur, I have to continue to be forward thinking and thinking about the future and casting onto other people the vision that I have for the future. But at the same time, there has to be a recognition of how real it can get. And part of it is a lot of us do not know our history. We don't understand how things have happened in the past. We have a friend of mine shared this week a group of students that was surveyed. They didn't realize that they thought that the Jewish folks were Nazis. Like people, they don't even know. They don't understand what has happened in the past. And so when you don't, you can dismiss a lot of things. Yeah, I'll tell you, the first time that and the only time, and hopefully only time, that Trump got elected, it wasn't until on actual election day that I thought to myself, like, this might actually happen.
Yeah.
I had that same kind of dismissive, like, oh, he's silly, like
it ain't going.
They're entertaining this. And I lived in Quincy at the time, and I went to to vote. And for elderly folks, they have assistants, so people are saying their votes out loud.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
And I was like, wow.
You heard.
Yeah. Some people were saying Romney, but I just was like, wow. It was the first day that I believed it. And I think that we are wholly underestimating him and the people that follow him.
And that go ahead, Doc.
I was afraid that it was going to happen because people were underestimating him, and also being a historian, I was looking at everything around. I was like, oh no, it's lining up.
Mm-hmm.
It's lining up. When he would go on different things, and they would give him softball questions, or when Jimmy Kimmel tussled his hair, I was like, no, you can't do this. And then like people would like use him in jokes, they put him in all these different like things in pop culture. I was like, this is the Ronald Reagan syndrome all over again. And the thing is that he's the name for all these older people, and they feel like these other people are too elitist. And also the thing was, we were just coming off of 8 years of Barack Obama being in office, and a lot of people felt like the world was on fire and upside down because there was a black family in the White House. And for a lot of us, it was a time where we felt like, oh, things are turning around and we might hit this and this might happen. And there were a bunch of other people that were like, we have to do everything to make sure this never happens again. Because if once Obama gets out of office, then that means that Hillary's going to be next. And then if there's a woman in the White House, then what's going to happen after that? And that's when that's when I knew I was like,
where I'm getting ready to go. Go keep talking. Finish that point.
And right after that, I knew that like things were going to turn. And as we can see, right now we're having this thing where it's sad to say, but journalism is almost on its deathbed because of it. Because there were all these people that had a disgusting amount of money, billionaires that bought into news sites and news services, and we realized why they did it, because they had their own political interests, and they were backing their own political candidates. And look at what's happened with the New York Times. Look at what's happened with these papers in Washington. All these sites that were online, mostly digital, they've been gutted. Yes, all of them been gutted, or they've been bought by somebody else. And it's just getting to the point now where it's very obvious what's happening, and it's all happening. It always happens around an election cycle, because similar things happened around 2020, 2019 going into 2020.
So let me I want to go a little bit deeper. I would be a little selfish and talk about black media. We can save that on the end, toward the end, but I am just going to say this. So this is why it's important to support black platforms, black reporters, black artists, black cameramen, black boom operators in the media industry. I had the opportunity this week to speak with Kwani Lunis from NBC, and she was just talking about her journey. I talked to Janae last week. We did Black Media Week, and so I just want to highlight that. Sheena, I want to ask you, particularly as a black woman, to speak to something that is a huge factor for people that are promoting Trump. They may be promoting him because it's him, but there's an extra fire and an extra element because of the concerns about Uncle Joe, with the possible lining up of our wonderful Kamala. Give me your thoughts, black woman.
Well, who wants a black woman president? I mean, I think that on a somewhat smaller scale, we saw what just happened with our president of Harvard, right? And
that part.
And so there is a immense, I don't know what the right is, fear of black women being in leadership, though we do everything anyway. But I think just being the face of something, being in an actual leadership role. So yeah, that's something that I've heard recently as well, because of what people feel like around Joe Biden's health, that if something happened to him, Vice President Harris would be next in line. I mean, it's so interesting growing up black. And I'm sure
that statement is so statement is so loaded.
And I would say any other probably non-white background, because for our survival, we have to accept that white people will be in leadership roles, that white people will tell us what to do at times, that white people are a lot of the time, that white people will be the one making the rules. So it's hard for me to understand the lengths that people will go to not have folks of color in power. Because for us, we're used to having maybe what's considered an other to us in power. And we've just had to live with it. And we've just had to create allyship. And we've had to find ways to, for that to just be a part of the way that we live. The fact that now, in particular, white people are feeling like they may have to share some leadership with us or some power with us, or that they will have to take direction from, in this case, a Black woman, and the lengths that they are going to prevent that is astonishing to me. I mean, I've read, unfortunately, many of the writing that Bill Ackman was doing, and trying to bring the president of Harvard down. And I'm like, dude, it's like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, why is this? You're a billionaire. This doesn't even.
You talk about when he wrote out the
impact
strategy?
The strategy,
to the whole,
when he was tweeting about it.
Listen.
The fear that is driving this country right now, the fear of people who have that look like us of being in leadership is really frightening. And I think that there's nothing more frightening than someone who's afraid of you, because what they will do, the things that they will do out of that fear is really scary.
Dart, this is a good segue, and it is past 10, so we are getting ready to wrap up. I asked if folks had questions, and we're going to go through some of the comments in a minute, but that's a good segue into, and Dart, both of you can, but just because of the role in the documentary, race in Boston. Mm-hmm. Where are we? We have we have an elected woman, Asian mayor who speaks Spanish. And everybody knows that I love when she's on screen.
Oh yeah,
as an Asian woman speaking Spanish in the city of Boston. It does. Jesus Lord, it does me so much good, because I know that the population to which you just spoke that is scared, they're shaking in their pants.
Yeah.
Race in Boston, Dart. Where are we?
So one of the interesting things about growing up in Boston when I grew up was that, again, the section and the parts of Boston I grew up in and primarily were overwhelmingly Black, Latino, Asian, mostly Chinese. I grew up right in close proximity to Chinatown, so that was my Boston. That was my experience of Boston. When I watched TV shows, I watched films, I never saw my Boston on TV. Cheers. I was like, damn, Robert Parrish don't even go to Cheers. He's never even been there.
Sometimes you want to go.
Yeah, and I would watch St. Elsewhere. St. Elsewhere was probably one of the first shows that I watched.
Which was in the South End.
Which, yes, St. Allegiance was technically near the Blackstone School. Yep. So I watched that and I was just like, oh, this is somewhat what life is like, in Boston, somewhat. And I would watch other shows and I'd be like, Spencer for Hire. It was like,
I did not know all these shows were based on
Spencer for Hire, St. Elsewhere, Cheers. Give her 1 or 2 more, because there's a few.
So what's crazy is that Hawk from Spencer for Hire was supposed to be the guy from Roxbury, and Spencer only ran into him when he was in big trouble and he was in Roxbury or Dorchester or something. And the hilarious part was that when he got his own show, they sent that man to DC. I was like, they couldn't just have him in Boston.
No,
so
it was a Black show, so he had to go to DC.
He had to go to DC because you couldn't have a Black show in Boston. What are you talking about? So my experience of growing up in Boston was that we were never going to be the face of the city. We weren't even going to be depicted. If they had a Boston public school in a TV show, the class was 85, 90% white.
Wasn't
and I'm like,
there a show at one point
called Boston Public?
Yeah, so Boston Public sourced from things that happened in the Boston public school system as I was working in the Boston public school system and went to office of the Attorney General.
Did they cover busing in that show?
No.
Sorry.
So what they did was they dealt with things that actually happened in the Boston public school system between 1994 and 1998, and then made them points to write the script about. And I would just be watching shows and I'm like, I was there when this happened. Like, I mediated that problem. It happened here. So I would just be bugged out about that. But in terms of race in Boston, it messes me up because this city is just getting to a point now where it's getting out from under that overwhelmingly white image.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people have issue with that. And I think one of the big important things is when I sat down and I talked to the man who made Murder in Boston, Jason Hayer. When we sat down and talked, I said one of the things that we need to change in terms of Boston and its perception. When I watched a documentary about the Red Sox, the only black person in it is Howard talking about why black folks didn't go to Fenway Park. When we did a documentary on ESPN and it was Celtics versus Lakers best of enemies, Magic Johnson said, black folks came up to me and said, we're from Roxbury and we're fans of y'all. We don't even root for the Celtics. I was like, they didn't think to find a black or Latino Bostonian to see if this is in fact true or not, or get their take. No, they didn't. And I said, these are things that piss me off. I was like, if you're going to do a documentary about the Boston Celtics and everybody in it is white, and I know I grew up in a neighborhood where we had Louis Tiant Park, what's now Jim Rice Field.
Mm-hmm.
We had
you just told age.
Yeah. And also we used to have this playground, Carter Playground. At Carter Playground, the Boston Astros used to play. My cousins used to play baseball at the Carter Playground. And I'm like, we were baseball crazy back then. So to not have us in it is insane. So I said, if we're going to do this, we need to center Black Boston, the harm that was done to us, and how we were sitting around talking about, this didn't happen. He didn't do this. I was like, because I promise you, Jason, in Boston's Black and Latino communities, I was in school at the time. I was hanging out with kids. I was sitting on stoops. Nobody believed that this was true. So I was like, we need to have that be the focal point. And he says, see, that's why I picked you. That's why I had to talk to you. So when we talk about race in Boston, you go on TikTok and you see like the TikTokers that people think represent Boston, like the everyday Maggies.
Who is that dude?
It's like
Jason Gargarino.
There's two or three of them that is
the prosciutto
black
poppy.
people. I keep getting tagged.
Yeah, prosciutto poppy. Like, all these people that just like they have this stereotypical depiction of what a Bostonian or a masshole is. And in terms of race in Boston, we're getting away from that, and people are seeing that, oh wait, Boston is a whole lot more diverse. That's why we have this actual Bostonian movement happening on TikTok and IG, where people talk about, yeah, I'm from Boston. I have all these Adidas. Yeah, I'm from Boston. My friend's Cape Verdean and Dominican. Yeah, I'm from Boston. I know Haitian Creole, So like when I see all these creators from Massachusetts and New England that changing the idea of what race in Boston looks like and who lives here, I love it. And I think that we're making serious headway, but the problem is that we have to get Boston on board to recognize that, because Boston,
go a little bit deeper for me. When you say we have to get Boston on board,
okay,
what part of Boston?
We're talking about specifically in film and television and in all media. If you're going to have things about Boston, make sure it shows the Boston that we live in and not the Boston that people think is this paradise for white folks. There's a joke Sam J told when she went on Questlove Supreme, and she was like, white people think that Boston is paradise. Yeah, they think it's like a resort. They think it's like Disneyland for white folks, so they could come here and be their whitest, truest selves.
Wait,
yeah.
I mean, I know I've heard some things about Boston, but I didn't know.
Yeah,
that's new to me. Yeah. Sheena.
Well, to pick up on that last piece, I mean, I was sitting here thinking the same thing, that I love that there's more of a, if grassroots is the right word, effort of content creators doing it on their own, but then the decision makers, the media has to reflect that too. And I do think there's a disconnect between that. And so, yes, there are people who are starting to give more voice to it. And obviously social media has a lot of power. And so, definitely something to be taken seriously, but then that sentiment has to show up in the way decisions are being made in the city, who's being given leadership positions in the city, and for me, it's always who has ownership in the city. And so I would say that Boston hasn't gotten there yet as far as who owns. This is a very trite example, but just to illustrate it. I went somewhere maybe a couple of weeks ago, and when when you look cute. I mean, frankly, that's what it was. And you don't want to go home yet.
Y'all said wait. So wait, hold on. The last part is what resonated with me the most.
Oh my God.
Because when it closed at 2:00, I ain't ready to go.
Right. It wasn't super late. Where I was ended. And I was like,
You
okay.
putting Dart through it out of
I
everything we
was like,
talked
I don't
about.
want to go home yet. Now I have my favorite spots, but I wanted a new experience. And I actually sat in my car for like 20 minutes. I'm looking through IG, I'm looking at certain hashtags, and I'm like, wow. And part of it was because I won't say that there was nowhere for me to go, but more so I was looking for a specific experience. I had just come back from DC the week before.
Mhm.
Post DC trauma.
Right. And so I was like, I wanted a certain vibe. I needed it to be serving food at the time. And I wanted to see other Black folks, and I wanted to hear certain kind of music. And so for me, that a lot of that comes back to ownership. We've had an amazing boom the past couple of years with Rob and Nia and Helder and others. And so it's been really exciting. And we have to continue to build off of that and make sure that this is a city that truly reflects. And you all know I always go back to social and nightlife and tourism, not because they are frivolous things. I mean, they're the things that make a city. It's the things that we're doing outside of our work lives. And so but when I'm having more policy focused conversations with policymakers in the city and the state, I bring up those examples to say that goes back to liquor licensing. That goes back to physical real estate ownership and people being able to afford to do that. That goes back to permitting and making opportunities easier, and that people don't have to jump through hoops to be able to serve burgers past a certain time. And I think the region, Boston and its surrounding region, that piece still needs to be understood, that culture is what moves and makes a city.
Absolutely.
And we have to make sure that the culture here reflects everyone who lives here. And I think we are moving in the right direction. But I'm telling you, I was sitting in my car like, let me get on Delta and see if there's somewhere I can hop to this weekend. And I don't want to feel like that.
Yeah,
it's why I choose to create, right? Because I want that for myself and I want it for others. But it's just a reality that is, a small example, but is really a reflection of where we still need to go.
Yeah, I wrote a piece about, my neighborhood and how it was the jazz corner and how people would get on a train from Harlem, get off at Back Bay Station and party all up and down Mass Ave, Tremont, Columbus, and stay there for years. And I got a DM from somebody from Detroit. They were like, well, if Boston had all this Black life and Black culture, then what happened and how come nobody knows about it now? And then I had to explain to him that between 1959 and 19... Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah. No, I just seriously, I'm like... Between 1959 and 1970, what happened is all but one of those venues that had full entertainment licenses, full liquor licenses, and kitchens either fell out of operation or burnt down. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that, yes, jazz died.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Did they do investigations into the fire?
See, that's another thing. Because here's what happened. When live jazz started dying in Boston and around the country, it had a similar effect to when the Negro League Baseball integrated. Because Negro League Baseball was a big boom to Black business. Right. You had Black hotels, you had Black restaurants. The Chitlin circuit existed for a reason, because when those teams traveled through, they brought all this money. They brought people to the baseball field, and they brought all this, like, you need a band, you need a dance, you need restaurants, you need all these things. And then when that died. And then the same thing happened in Boston with the death of live jazz. And I said, now, when that happened between 1959 and 1970, what's going to happen with these venues? Because it's not like soul, R&B, and funk had the same kind of, cachet that jazz did, because jazz was considered high art by white folks,
and it survived.
And
it's
one
survived.
Of the
genres.
Yes, but one of the reasons it survived was because it was classified as high art, and also because white folks kind of took ownership of it later, and Black people kind of moved into soul, jazz, funk, and then later, created rap and all these other things. But what I'm saying is that I explained to him is like, we lost a lot of economic power when all these venues, and only one that still existed was Wally's, which moved across the street to where it presently is.
Somebody just said the Sugar Shack.
Well, what happened with the Sugar Shack? The Sugar Shack was partially under white management, and the Sugar Shack was a black, blue, R&B, soul, funk club. And the Sugar Shack had its run. So did Roscoe's Lounge. And what was in Dudley Square.
Somebody already said that a couple of TV shows that Dart and I were talking about. They said, I think it was a Sia. She said Sheena's not going to know anything about them.
No, I did know them, but I didn't know they were based off of Boston. You have to understand. Growing up in New York, moving to Atlanta, and then coming here. I was 21 when I came here. How can I say this?
Just whatever way you want.
Obviously, I knew Boston, right?
Yep.
I would come here to go to the Museum of Science and Aquarium and for field trips. My stepsister actually lived here for a couple of years, but it wasn't on my radar as like a major place.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't until I became an adult. So that's why I kind of reacted like that, knowing that so many shows were based off of Boston. I'm like, why? What was going on? Why was it such a major, why were so many stories coming out of the city now? And then there's the other question of why they weren't reflecting.
I mean, a lot of it had to do with the fact that so many people had time here. They either went to school here, got their careers started here. And a lot of people from the suburbs went on to have writing jobs and different gigs and creative jobs at all these different spaces. And also it was like a feeder to like Saturday Night Live. You either came from Boston or Massachusetts, or you came from Chicago, or the Groundlings or Second City or something like that, or you came from the Boston scene, or you came from New York, the New York clubs. So that's why you watch like a Saturday Night Live and they have all these skits about Massachusetts, because if you look at the writer's room, you look at Conan O'Brien.
What's his name? The dude that went and did his own talk show, late night show.
Seth Meyers.
Yeah, isn't he from?
Yes. So a whole bunch of people from Massachusetts and the Boston suburbs were always on these shows. So they always did skits, just like they did skits about Chicago, the Bears,
Yeah.
And so that's why we get all these depictions of Boston, but they're never of my neighborhood. Quite literally, I think there are very few black writers who worked on SNL, including like Sam. Sam J, was a writer on SNL for the longest. And, like I was just talking to her maybe was it last year when we made the Reggie Lewis throwback jersey and we presented it to her before, like it was Sam J Day when she had her show. And she was just talking about the process that it went through for her to, get that job, the audition to write. And she was like, I didn't know that they had comedy writing classes right at Emerson that I could have taken. I didn't know that they were doing this right here at Northeastern University. He's like, and I would talk to people and they were telling me that's how they got their foot in the door. She was like, how come I didn't know it? And it was right there in my neighborhood. It was right there in my backyard.
There's and we're getting up on time. And we must be doing well because IG typically cuts you off after an hour. And they haven't cut us off yet. So shout out to the Real Boston Media. We got to get ready to wrap up because I really kept y'all over time. But I said this when we did it last year, but maybe, and I'm asking y'all on the spot here, but maybe we can reconvene in person in June, around Juneteenth. And see, we got to shift that narrative too, because I've been struggling with Black History Month. If you notice, I've been mentioning it, but haven't gone hard like we usually do. But we're programmed, conditioned to, why did my mind
talk about Black things during
jump to June? Yeah.
So at some point when we're free, I think, because people were asking for a second part of what we did in person last year. Not that many questions, but a lot of comments here. This was so good. Somebody just commented. Corey Manning is in the room. Good stuff, Jimmy. I got to run. Please tell Sheena and Dart that I said hello. And tell Dart we have to connect. And so I appreciate Corey being in the room. He was the only one that had a question. Most everybody else has comments, so y'all can go back and look at the comments if you want. But I want to be intentional about it. We talked about a lot of heavy subjects today, so I want to be intentional and talk about Black joy and what's going on in the city. There is some improvement coming to nightlife. We have spaces. We got Law on D. We got a lot of other things. Dart, you just launched, either you're part of a line and you just like relaunched on social media because you moved away from the X.
Yeah. It was just getting too MAGA for me. So I moved to Blue Sky, which is a bunch of journalists wondering like, is everybody gonna move over here or nah? But over at Mathematic Athletics, they have a new collection called By Any Means Necessary, BAMN, which is celebrating Malcolm X and his time and history in Boston. And it's very like real to me because, again, growing up, I became a historian because people would tell me stories about my neighborhood, my city that I never heard anywhere else.
We don't. This is what.
And I would walk by buildings and people would point and say, Malcolm X used to hang out there. This used to be this. Martin Luther King Jr. played ball here. So it really cemented me as like, oh, so this is living, breathing history.
I got to chime in and say, Dart, and I said this to you before, and I'm cusping on the lines of being emotional, but we got to ensure that he is documented.
Protect Dart.
But Sheena, I didn't want to say protected because what they're trying to do in our country is erase our history. And I listened to so much of what you said today, some stuff aware of, but the way it was presented, you're able to connect the dots and put some chronological order to it. But the protection, I didn't want to articulate that because what that implies.
Yeah.
But the documentation of and be very intentional, because there, like, you should be a course at RCC. You should be a course in Boston Public Schools. BMA, the Black Office of Black Male Advancement, like Erica Butler's group, the girls, and we need a junior. I'll talk to you.
WB.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need a junior. Like, sorry.
I mean, this is exactly why I did the piece. The post. If you go to Dart_Adams at Instagram, I did a piece today about the colored American magazine, which was based in my neighborhood between 1904 and 1900 and 1904. And his first office was at 232 West Canton, which is around the corner from me. And then the other one was at 5 Park Square, which would be down the street. And I would go to each place and just walk by. And again, there are a whole bunch of placards and things denoting like places of like Black history, in my neighborhood. But by my count, it only covers about maybe 50 to 60% of all the things that should be, and so I decided to like put this little piece of Black history there because it's important to know that the first monthly publication in the nation dedicated to Black culture was founded here by a bunch of Black people who wanted to highlight Black culture, and it was mostly edited by a Black Bostonian woman. And when she was ousted by, I wrote the piece, wrote the information. She was ousted by Booker T. Washington. They had
she was a woman.
Well, because they wanted ownership of the magazine, they wanted to move it to New York.
Okay.
Because he was contributing to it. They had a hostile takeover of the magazine, moved it to New York, and they got rid of her. And when they got rid of her, the magazine was never the same.
I wonder why.
And the thing is that, like, I also highlighted that NAACP's The Crisis, which was formed by like W.B. Du Bois, who also contributed to the same magazine. And then later on, the UNIA had a magazine, which one of the guys who was in charge of it also contributed to the Colored American magazine. They all used that as the blueprint for how they conducted their Black newspaper and their Black publication. And even if you look at Ebony, which started, I believe, in 1945, it harkened back to this same publication that started in Boston.
That's just like the piece, like The Emancipator. Cornell Brooks, one of the most compliments I ever got. He said that who started The Emancipator? Oh God, not The Emancipator. Who was the Trotter? What was the name of his publication?
Emancipator is recent.
No, but there's a sisters that's doing that, but there was. Trotter had a publication back in the day that was printed out of right across from Slade's. So Cornell Brooks was telling me about that, but there's so much history.
The Emancipator and the Liberator were both printed out of Boston.
The old Emancipator?
Well,
there's the new one that Sheena's referring to. But
there was the old Emancipator, and also there was the Liberator.
Was that Trotter that did the older?
I think Trotter did the Emancipator. The Liberator was done by another guy who is an abolitionist.
All right, we there's 10:29. We're 90 minutes into UCB. So I'm on UCB's thing for their points. If they watch Java with Jimmy, they get They get points.
Oh, nice.
Shout out to Eric. So
Yeah,
Sheena
I'm a
is
proud board member.
Sheena's a board member at UCB. So y'all, Mama Java, my mother will always call out. You know how when you watch a live and it'll tell you who's watching with you, but if they don't comment, I don't know that they're here. My mother be saying good morning, Uncle Thaddeus. What's up, brother? That's a good segue to get ready to end in Black Joy. This I have to say that this was better than last year. We did the casting of the future and looked at the history. We got some history here. We got the importance, I think, more today of us participating actively in the future design of Boston. We got the Dorchester-based city that's getting ready to form and whatnot. Like this, that needs to be, along with Liz's district, that needs to be the blackest, brownest.
Have you had Kirk on here? Kirk Sykes?
No, Kirk
You
is
should.
Kirk
He's a developer.
He's the main developer. Oh, I've known Kirk since back in his days at when he was on the board at Lena Park when Lorraine Ball was there.
Oh, wow.
So that's how far I was going to say. Okay, I'll I'll reach out and say your recommendation, because I usually reach out to him with ask coat drives and stuff, because he's the Hampton down at Mass and Cass, and Kurt he does a lot. Him and Richard are Omni, and so yeah, we need to do a part 2. But I want to thank both of you for being here. But that transition of my mother saying hi to Thaddeus, Leonard Lee is in the Guardian. That's what it was. The Guardian. Thank you, Leonard Lee. And speaking of Leonard Lee, I need that information on that billboard. Good to see you in the room. The Guardian, that was what Cornell Brooks had basically mentioned and said that, Jimmy, you're like the 2023 version of the Guardian anyway, Black Joy. Thaddeus is in the room. And so I think it's so appropriate and people are already saying part 2, please. Part 2, please. I want us to end in Black Joy. And Dart, knowing we don't see you be jumping around but I need to know what you
smile. Do you smile, Dart?
Occasionally. It has happened in the past.
Hold on, because it wasn't if the camera was on me then. So wasn't there a whole tweet or Instagram or something about you smiling? Wasn't there a thread? No.
Yeah, there was a thread of people going back, citing historical moments in time when I have actually smiled.
We actually got him to keel over a little bit. I think we caught that on camera. And so, Dart, Black Joy, man, what do you do to sustain your Black Joy, and keep it full?
Basically, one of the reasons why I do what I do and tell all these stories and express
you can't mention nothing about work.
Well, to me, it's not really work.
Governor Patrick challenged me one day. He was like, "What do you do for fun?" And I was like, "Oh, I help the community." No.
Well, in terms of that, I've been involved in basketball and sport my entire life, and one of the things that I do is that I use it as a metaphor for how we relate to our city. And like
he went right back to work.
Yeah, no, how we relate to our city, because like I love telling these stories. I love letting everybody know. Yeah, I love letting everybody know.
Black Joy.
I love letting everybody know that like Boston had the oldest, municipal league in America in 1969, and I like to be able to tell that via I'm going to make a BNBL jersey. I'm going, and then when we drop the BNBL jersey, we're going to shoot it here and we're going to do this. So basically me sitting around planning what I'm going to do next and how I'm going to tell these stories and who I'm going to involve. That's the thing that keeps me going. Like I pretty much me and the guys at Mathematic Athletics / Boston Legends. Yep. We're just setting up everything we want to do for 2024 and 2025 going forward. And we were hindered by, after the pandemic happened, we lost kind of 3 years.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty much where I derive my joy and happiness from. Of course, I watch the Celtics and what have you. But
Real Boston Media just said that boy Dart and his Celtics recaps. And his clapbacks. The clapbacks.
Yeah. I have a whole bunch of them loaded up, man.
When people try to come at you with facts, and when I see the long dissertation or what's one of your intros, is it not let's get the facts straight? There's an intro that you put up one day, and just from the intro, I said, "Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good." He laughed. We got to tell you, hey! All right, we good. Sheena, what do you do for Black Joy?
I live a very happy life. I do.
Wait, hold on. Because knowing my sister, right? I've asked her this question before, and I've got, Sheena, say it again.
I do. You know what?
No, say those exact
I
words
live a
again.
very happy life. We live in a very heavy world, and even the calling on my life, I feel like is heavy. I try to deliver it in a joyful way, but I know that I'm here to be a unifier for Black folks, and that comes with a lot of heaviness. So because of that, I find daily, weekly opportunities to, if you ever drove past my house, you'd think someone was putting a concert on. There's constantly music going. I get a lot of joy out of my team and the, young Black leaders that
she's gonna kill me, but I'm gonna get her on camera one way or another.
helping to groom. I am very family and friend oriented and pour a lot into those relationships. And, I've learned that even with Boston Black, right? Like I want to scale it. I want to bring us to other cities. I think that, what we're trying to solve is not just a Boston issue. However, I know that the American way is to make everything cheaper, faster, and scale nationally. And I actually think because of that, I've reverted back to getting back to my smaller, like micro communities. So my family, my friends, though I love my full community and my BWB community, all the people I know in the city, the relationships that I have, but what actually fuels me are my nieces and nephews and my mother being able to come over and me cook for her.
Did you get the what was it, the pot roast? What was you making?
I made this banging leg of lamb, y'all.
The leg of lamb you did? I seen you put a thing up looking for recipes.
I found one, Julia Childs. It was my first time making it. It went too fast. I couldn't even take a picture.
Wait. That's so bad. That is so bad. That's how you know something's good. I made it from a recipe and we ate it so quick, couldn't take a picture of it. Not even the bone. Damn.
No, it was barely any left. But those are the things that bring me joy. Being able to be a homeowner, have my family sitting around my table with a meal that I cooked, like there's nothing can replace that. I know that I'll have many professional achievements. I'm not worried about that. It's really pouring into the people that I love.
Sheena and Dart, I want to again thank both of you. Folks are talking about part 2. Instagram. You know what? Jesus is good because Instagram just cut us off. After an hour and 37, they said, okay, we're going to give you 90. You forcing it. But no, audience, please, in the comments, those of you that are watching on Twitter, Killer Boombox jumped on and said we did well. I did get a question from Brandon. Just real quick thoughts on Boston's music scene.
I love Boston's
both
music.
of y'all.
I love Boston's music scene. I think we're in a place now where we have the most talent across the board at different levels than we've ever had. I think that we have a whole lot of diverse music for people to come and listen to and all these other things. I just talked to Oompa a couple days ago because I did this thing at Snipes. It was called Making History, Sneaker Stories. And Oompa told me that she's moving to California. And
wait. And I want to be sensitive to the fact too that she just went through a lot of personal tragedy, and so we also want to lift and mothers, y'all put the praying hands and stuff and put Oompa on the prayer list. But while I'm like, oh, dag, it could be the industry, and it could also just be that she need to get out of here.
Yeah, it's like, and also I was telling her, I was like, well, you hung on for about 2-3 years longer than I thought you were going to. She's like, yeah, I did. He's like, but it's time to do X, Y, and Z and do this. I was like, look, if so many other people didn't leave and go out there and do their thing, then things wouldn't be where they are for Boston. If Keith Elam Guru didn't get out there and go to Brooklyn, back in 1987, things wouldn't be how they are. People got to go. Static, he had to get out there, go to Brooklyn. You look at people like Stiz and Bia. They had to go out and do certain things. For their careers. Rest in eternal peace to my dude, Hefe Replay. He had to make moves. Out there to really maximize his career. I mean, I don't begrudge anybody for doing that. And I think that hung around for a long time and she's made us all proud and she will continue to, no matter where she is. But the Boston music scene is amazing. we have so many people doing great things and making amazing art. And I'm infinitely proud of that.
Sheena, your thoughts on Boston's music scene?
Yeah, no, I feel the same. I mean, I try to prioritize. I'm a music lover, and so I do try to prioritize knowing local artists. Love Oomp. Shout out to Nay Speaks, my Spelman sister,
Okay.
and she got Boston Music Award Best New Artist, I think, this year, sophomore, junior at Spelman, and from Mattapan. And yeah, there's just a lot of creativity here. Now, knowing Brandon, I would
I'd be
I would also add and suspect that some of his question is also coming from the business side kind of the Boston music scene, and just how Boston still has some ways to go to put itself on the map. You know, I think that, and that's true for us as residents in supporting the artists that are here. So yes, this creativity exists here, but we have to support the folks that are here. And that's why I try to do my little part of sharing, you know, word of mouth of the people that I listen to. But I think that you know, a thread through all of what we're talked about, there are certain areas where Boston is just not seen as the place to hear, you know, new music. And I think that there's a lot to be done on the business side for Boston to be viewed in that way, because there's a lot of deep, really rich creativity here.
Brandon said she knows me well. Listen, for the folks that you must have, this is interesting because we didn't play any music or whatever, and in the last couple of minutes, one of the Facebook pages cut us off and claiming some crazy music, and so we're still on with folks. But I just, something you said or whatever, that Black Power, whatever. But anyway, I appreciate both of you being here. Thank all of you for watching today. We'll figure out how we do part 2. It doesn't have to be in June. So we'll figure that out. And shout out to the wonderful sister. I can't get the camera to do what it needs to do. So
Shout out to Alex.
Shout out to
on the BWB.
Hey, come on, a little more. No, just put your face in there. Dip down a little bit. She got on a red. Come on, show your Boston. See, right there. So thank you to Sheena and Dart. Thank all of you that participated today, and we'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We're speaking with our Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, closing out Black History Month and beginning Women's History Month. And so Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley will be with us at 9 a.m. We'll see you then. Have a great day, everybody, and we shall talk to you soon. Let me just get everything queued up. Okay, there we go. All right, talk to y'all later. Peace.